The Pittsburgh Penguins are hanging on to a small chance of making the playoffs, and tonight's game against the Washington Capitals will be a big deciding factor. And if they can continue to climb the rankings and potentially crack a playoff spot, we'll discuss that game as well as the Boston Bruins, Carolina Hurricanes game, and the third game, the St. Louis Blues and Nashville Predators. Guys, welcome into PuckTime here on WagerTalk TV. I'm Andrew. I've got Carmine and Brian with me to break these down. Best bets, of course, at the end of the show. All right, Carm, we'll start things off with you. Should be a great one in this one here. Boston Bruins, Carolina Hurricanes, Carolina, the home team. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm glad we're not, the three of us are not dropping the gloves 2 seconds into the show like that game last night in New York. Andrew, this is a great game, man. I'm telling you, whether it turns out to be a great game on the ice will remain to be seen. But you've got a couple teams here, and you look at them as far as the standings go. You've with the Rangers win last night, they're at 106 points. You got the Bruins at 103, and the Canes at 101. Now the Bruins got the number one seed in the Atlantic right now, but that can change quickly because number one, if the Bruins lose tonight to Carolina in regulation time, and Florida goes into Ottawa and beats them, they're a couple points apart for that number one seed. But then they play in a couple days against each other, Florida and Boston, and another Florida win puts them in the number one seed, which is hard to believe considering the struggles that they're having. You know, I looked at this one, and whenever we talk about goalies, and whenever I talk about goalies on this show, because they're unconfirmed unless we can find that they're confirmed, I'll talk about goalies like it's supposed to be Swayman and Anderson in goal tonight. It could turn out that the Bruins decide to go with Ullmark. I'll let you know if my play is based on the goalies or regardless of the goalies. So it won't matter who eventually ends up in net. But I look at this one, Andrew, and I'm leaning straight under in this one. Everything on the show has, and a lot of the games on tonight's card have an under feel to them. You look at the Canes 8-2 to the under their last 10 at home. This is a team that's playing extremely well right now, still has eyes on the number one spot in the East. But at the very least, they're stringing wins together. It's going to come right down to the wire because a lot of these teams have some very competitive games coming up. And then the Bruins, you look at their last 10 away, 7-3 to the under. You get a couple of these teams together, and normally, absent of power plays, absent of mistakes, if these teams are playing, and there's a lot at stake for these two teams tonight, you expect it to be a very tight one throughout, under 5.5. Those 5.5s are tough, but in taking unders, but this one just has that 2-1, 3-2 feel to it. So I'm going to ride with the under here and see what Brian has to say.
Best bet on the show, so I'm going to come back to it a little bit later. But you had mentioned a little bit about both these teams and the needs of each. The Bruins 103 points, 4 points ahead of Florida. Carolina 101 points, sit 5 points behind the Rangers with a game in hand. So this, as you mentioned, is going to be a highly sought after win for both teams. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to do something a little different with the total, but I'm in agreement. I think it'll be a low scoring affair. You would expect this to be like a playoff preview. So I'll come back and I'll touch on this for my best bet. But as of this point, I think you're headed in the right direction here.
Well, as I continue to notice, guys, with these matchups that are playoff bound teams versus non-playoff bound games, you're just seeing that defensive intensity be there a lot more. You're seeing almost like a preview of what we're going to see in the first round. You know, the first 10 minutes of a game being the feel out process, you know, dumping the puck deep, go and chase it, make a few hits, you know, create a few plays. But it's almost like nobody wants to make a mistake. And, you know, I cashed the under in the last Bruins game here as a best bet on the show. They did have to kill 4 penalties. They were 4 for 4 on the PK, which is great for them. But in this particular matchup, I think both teams will have the exact same game plan. And you know, nobody likes to play against Carolina at home. They get the last change. They get all the matchups they want. They absolutely clog up the middle of the ice. Nobody likes it. And I'm sure that other coaches do not like how Rod Brendamore does what he does, with the way he clogs things up, but it works for them. And to Carm's point, we're all about transparency here. Under 5.5 can be tough, because I was on the phone with Carm telling him that my under with the Kraken and Kings was looking pretty good last night. And we had a 4-goal third period. That doesn't really help you very much when you get a 5.5 and you get 4 goals in one period. But with these two teams, I don't think that can happen. I don't think we'll see a 4-goal period here. 5.5s can be tough, but I'm liking the way the depth is working right now for the Boston Bruins. All 3 centermen are back checking very well. Defense is looking good. And both teams, I would argue, have good depth at goaltender. Obviously kind of clear number ones at this point, but still, I believe, as Carm mentioned, some games more than others, we probably care about depth, or we care more so about starting goaltenders. But under 5.5 is the play for me. These divisional matchups, these playoff bound matchups here with teams trying to climb the ranks in their division, look for an under. And if people notice already, I've been betting a lot more overs with teams that are eliminated from the playoffs and teams that are playoff bound, looking for some defensive games. So, Carm, lots of totals for me lately, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Andrew. I hate playing totals, and we have an Instagram question that we're going to get to in a little bit. And Stock Tonk 93, I love your question, and the answer to it is going to be my show play at the end of the show. But we're still going to talk about it. But Andrew, you and I were on the phone yesterday. The Edmonton Oilers just didn't show up last night in Dallas. The score was 5-0 at the end of the second period, and you and I were discussing the live in-game over. It's at 6.5. It seems so attractive because you're thinking 6.5. They need 2 goals in the third period. When you're looking at a number that sits at 5 at the end of the second period, especially in-game betting, and Andrew, you and I do a lot of in-game betting. It is one of the worst numbers to want to bet the over at the end of the second period. Because number one team hasn't shown up for 2 periods. Number 2, the other team is playing lockdown. But of all the numbers that land on 5-0 is one of the toughest to get there, because your goals have to come 5-on-5 or 4-on-5. You're not going to see any empty net action in that to get you a goal. 4-1. You're going to need, in order to have at least 2 to 3 minutes of empty net time to get you maybe a goal, you're going to need the team that's down 4-1 to make it 4-2, or all your goals got to come 4-on-5 or 5-on-5. 3-2 final score, or 3-2 score at the end of the second period is probably the best one to play. But a book is not going to give you 6.5 minus 105 on the over like it was last night for this game at the end of the second period, because 3-2 gets there so many ways. It wins, obviously, with a tying goal. The empty netter is in play. There's so much at play. Books are normally going to juice that to 160, 170, or they're going to make it 7.5. So those 5-0 ones, I almost want to just take the under in it and lay the little bit of vig in that one. But with that said, here's my question for you, Andrew, real quick. We talk about this Boston team, and we talk about Florida that we're going to talk about later as far as answering that Instagram question. Here's this: who wins the division, Andrew? And Brian, you can jump in on this one as well, too. The Florida Panthers, as bad as they've been playing of late, play Ottawa tonight, and then they play the Bruins. They come home to play Ottawa. They come home to then they're home to Columbus. They're home to Buffalo Sabres, and they're home to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So they're home for the last 4 games of the season. 4 of these 5 games, 4 of their last 6 games are against non-playoff teams, with Ottawa being one of them twice. The Bruins, Carolina tonight in Carolina. Then they've got Florida. Then they've got Carolina again, this time in Boston. They got the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are suddenly hot. The Washington Capitals, who are in a playoff spot right now and trying to win games. And then they end it with the Ottawa Senators. Boston has a 4-point lead right now. Andrew, do they hold on and win the division?
That's a lot to throw at me, Carm, but I do think they will. I think they will. This Florida team, you've talked about it a lot, that it's about entering the playoffs, entering the postseason healthy. Obviously, you want to enter the postseason on a good note. We've seen teams limp into the postseason and not look the same. And the teams with momentum, they end up doing very well. But we've also seen the teams run out of gas. And I don't think the Panthers ran out of gas last year. They ran out of manpower. They ran out of healthy players at that point. So at this point, I think the Panthers' goal is to go into the playoffs just being healthy. What are your thoughts there, Brian?
Yeah, I agree. I think it sounds like we're in agreement on that one. You mentioned Ottawa a few times. These teams got to play Ottawa. Isn't Ottawa the team at the end of the year, after they're out of the playoffs, they always seem to play pretty well down the stretch? So just because a team is out of the playoff hunt does not mean they're going to not come out and play good quality hockey. So, yes, going in which games mean more to each team, but still, as we can see many times, the underdog is taken advantage of, at least in the minds of the players going into that game, and they come out and they score 2 goals right off the bat. No matter how good the other team is, you're playing catch up, and if you're not prepared ahead of time, we've seen this so much in football. If you don't prepare during the week, you're going to lose that game. So, just because the team's not in the playoff hunt doesn't mean they can't come out and sting you.
Absolutely.
Brian,
Sorry, Carm.
Brian, I'm telling you, and Andrew, we talked about this. I'm the guy who, about a week and a half ago, declared the Pittsburgh Penguins dead on arrival. They had no pulse. I said they were done. And much like The Undertaker in WWE, they've risen from the dead like the Phoenix. 9 points out of 10 their last 5 games, and they're smack dab right in it. If they beat Washington in regulation tonight, they are a point out of a playoff spot for a team that was dead and buried. And that string of losing games started with a 6-0 loss on the day in which they sat Jake Gunsel because they planned on trading him March the 7th. So sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. We'll see how this one pans out. But speaking of the aforementioned Pittsburgh Penguins, Andrew, let's talk about them now.
Carm, the Pittsburgh Penguins are a team that I said nobody deserves to make the playoffs. If you remember a few days ago, I said none of these teams, the way they were all playing, it's almost like a battle of who can play the worst. I mean, these teams were not playing great, but now Pittsburgh building some momentum here, Brian. They're playing the Washington Capitals, and this is an old rivalry. 2 teams that were always meeting in the first round of the playoffs, 2 teams that were always contenders with the superstars Ovechkin and Crosby. According to MoneyPuck.com, Pittsburgh Penguins, if they win this in regulation, they will get an increase of 8%, leading them to 23.2% chance of making the playoffs. To say this game means a lot would be an understatement here, Brian, but we always know must win does not mean will win. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been watching the line in this game all morning, and it seems to be 2 different syndicates going opposite directions, because 1 minute Pittsburgh will be hit and the line will move. 5 minutes later, the other side are hit. So there's 2 groups out there that like each side of this one. But we know we're going to get quality pre-playoff hockey here. The Penguins currently sit in 5th place in the wild card race, but only 3 points behind 2nd place Washington, as Carmine pointed out. Critical game for both teams. If we take a look at the last 10 games, 5-on-5 play, the Penguins a 52.38 goal share, which is solid, 51.24% in expected goals. Washington, a little bit less here. Washington 41.86 in goal share, 46.31 in expected goals. Washington's won 6 of the last 10 meetings, and 4-5 in this building. So they're going to come into this game pretty confident against Pittsburgh, even though Pittsburgh has been playing, as Carmine pointed out, the better hockey right now. Pittsburgh fell apart at the trade deadline, but they've rebounded as well as of late, winning 4 of 5. And they've beaten Carolina, the Rangers, and the Devils, 3 of the 4 teams that they had beat. So they've been beating some quality teams. Capitals have dropped 3 straight and play tomorrow night in Carolina. So that's going to be a tough game for them. The spot here screams Washington. Pittsburgh's playing the tougher hockey. I kind of like Washington and what is amounted to basically a pick'em situation here. Washington has looked good at home against Pittsburgh, and this is really, even though they're the team ahead, this is a must-win game them as they go on the road and play Carolina in a game that they're going to be a pretty good size underdog in.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a tough stretch. And, the underdog factor, or not the underdog factor, I guess, but the team that nobody's talking about as much still, this Washington team has still been playing great hockey as well. I mean, we can't argue that they went on a huge run over the last 2 months. Pittsburgh Penguins, man, led by their top guys. Can they continue to push them closer to a playoff spot? What do you think?
I think they can. I'm likely looking at the total in this one, Andrew, but I think I'm going to be on the opposite of Brian when we're talking about sides. I just think a team can get hot at the right time and make a run and get into the playoffs. Watching yesterday's game, the Rangers Devils game, they talked about the Devils, and I think it was back in '88 or something like that, where they looked dead and buried, and they went 7-0-1, something like that. They won 7 of their last 8 games to get the final playoff spot and knocked out the Rangers. As far as making it into the playoffs, they got hot at the right time. It just seems like Pittsburgh, after that run where again I declared them dead, man. They've been winning games, and we talk about it. They went into New Jersey, dominated them. That was the second of a back-to-back after beating the Rangers the night before. They lose that game in Columbus. They blew a late lead. That was a back-to-back with Columbus, but they still picked up 3 out of 4 points in those 2 games. And then obviously beating the Canes. That was a good game against the Canes and Gunzel's return to Pittsburgh. So it's not like they're not beating teams that have given up on the season. They're playing competitive hockey. Sid's carrying this team. You look at guys like Rust playing well. Malkin is getting in people's faces and irritating them as well too, and scoring goals. It's one of those things where a team builds momentum sometimes, and you just don't want to get it in the way of it. And now they got Washington, so it's a true 4-point game between these two, and the road teams won all 3 games in this series thus far. And I'm pretty sure it's not lost on the Pittsburgh Penguins that Washington came in and completely embarrassed them 6-0 back on March the 3rd, which is like just under a month ago. It's not lost on them, but trust me. I think Pittsburgh goes in there and wins, but I think Washington's way to get back into this final 6 or 7 games of the season, back to winning games, is going back to what they were doing before. They were playing great D. They were checking. They were swamping the neutral zone, not giving teams any room whatsoever. They were getting on them, and those games were going under. They were playing some great defense. They're going to have to do that to Pittsburgh. They're literally going to have to mirror those guys on the ice, play a defensive game. It's in their benefit if the game went to overtime. They pick up a point even if they lose the game. I like the under in this. It's sitting at 6. I got to lay about 15 cents juice, but 6 is always another number. If you get 6.5, it'd be great, but you're never going to get 6.5 with these 2 teams this late in the season. So give me the under 6 with a slight lean on Pittsburgh.
All right, Carm, looking towards a defensive battle. And as I keep mentioning, these games that have so much meaning, a lot of times we are seeing defensive games and low-scoring games. Small lean to the Pittsburgh as well for Carm, and Brian looking towards the home team, the Washington Capitals. I'll give my take on the side in the best bet segment, but as for now, guys, 2 player props. I keep on mentioning how top-heavy they are, so why don't I go ahead and say Dylan Strome to get a point. 8 of his last 10 games, this guy has a point. He's out there on the power play. He's playing big minutes. He's out there a lot with Alex Ovechkin. So whether he's scoring or Ovechkin scoring, usually he is a part of those plays. And then, of course, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, wash, rinse, repeat. Sidney Crosby to record an assist. 8 of his last 10 games, he has gotten an assist. It's really out of this world to bet the point prop, because if you have 1 or 2 bad days with it, you're going to lose quite a few units because it's like minus 230. You can get a really good price, minus 115, to just get an assist. And he's obviously passing the puck around a lot. He's out there on the power play as well. And I think that as much as Sid has been scoring, the key for the Penguins is for him to be able to find his teammates. When he draws attention, to be able to find his teammates and create goals for them. So to get an assist, 8 of his last 10 games, I'll ride that streak with those two players. And even if it isn't a low-scoring game, I think Strome and Crosby are two players that have a big factor in this Thursday night showdown, the Metropolitan Division between the Penguins and the Capitals. I believe we do have a Instagram live question here talking about from Matty Crenshaw asking if there's value on Pittsburgh for any futures. Well, if the word value to you means getting a really big plus price, then I would say yes. At this point in time, I would probably say that, I would only go as far as maybe betting them to make the playoffs. I don't know if I'd go as far as to win the East or win the Cup or anything like that. If you want to take them, because, it's actually a good point, because in some of their games coming up, they're not really going to be massive underdogs. So the price you're getting for them to make the playoffs right now and just getting to make one bet versus betting them on their pick, minus 110, 120, whatever it might be each day, I think actually could be a good idea. So Matty Crenshaw from Instagram Live, I would say my 2 cents, the playoff future would be a decent idea, especially to limit your volume. Carm, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, the current price on Pittsburgh to win the Stanley Cup. So I haven't seen any to make the playoff ones. I haven't seen any to win the conference prices, but to win the cup, they are 40-1 right now. Probably should be a little bit higher just because they're on the outside looking in, and we got 6 games left. And if they lose tonight to Washington in regulation, that price is probably 50 or 60-1. So I don't think there's value there, just because even if they squeak into the playoffs, somehow into that number 8 seed, they're going to have to play the New York Rangers or the Boston Bruins or the Carolina Panthers Carolina Hurricanes in the first round. Thinking football after that Stephon Diggs bomb you dropped on me yesterday, Andrew. I don't think there's any value there. You would need for them to not only get into the playoffs but win a series before you can start with that little bit of hedging to at least make your money back and lock up some future profit as well too. So it's a no for me.
Yeah, for myself,
Ryan,
it's a situation that if you're going to do it, you do it in hockey, because we see this every year. A team just barely makes the playoffs and they go on a long run. Teams that win the President's Cup do not advance in the playoffs. So hockey is the one sport. I guess baseball is a little bit like that also, because you cut it down to only basically 2 starters that you need in the playoffs for the most part. But in the NBA, I would never play a big underdog like that. But in hockey, since the games are so close and you're only scoring, your winning team in a hockey game normally scores, 3 goals, 4 goals at the most. You're right in there with an underdog. So I'm not saying I would play Pittsburgh, but I would say that if you're looking to bet an underdog in the playoffs, this is the sport to do it in.
You see it every year. A team just gets on a roll, gets going, and a big part of it, I believe, is what Brian just mentioned there. The games get lower scoring. They get more physical. They get more intense. And if they're lower scoring, that means the defensive ability can help you with, only having to score 1 or 2. And what happens is, Brian, is that those games are still entertaining. I can get behind a low-scoring game. I know some hockey fans, the way they're trying to change baseball and hockey and basketball, fans these days can't enjoy a low-scoring game. But, we have seen some awesome 2-1 hockey games in playoffs, really great games. To me, sometimes a 5-4 playoff game is like sloppy. It's not even like quality hockey versus you see a real low-scoring game. That's the best hockey, I think.
Yeah,
Carm,
Andrew,
I thought you were jumping in again.
Yes, I am jumping in. I enjoy that. I enjoy the old school hockey during the regular season. I know there's not much fun in watching a 2-1 game, but I think it was that Florida game, the Florida Carolina game, where Aho scored with like 20 seconds left. It was the only goal of the game, 1-0. But it was pure hockey, back and forth. It wasn't static hockey. There were plenty of chances. Goalies played extremely well. those are the games I enjoy. We're going to see them in the playoffs. And to Brian's point, the playoffs are where you want to bet some dogs and you can make some money. If you look at last year's first round of the playoffs, game one of the last year's playoffs first round was won by the road team, the underdog last year. 6 of 8 games was won by um, um, the away team at plus odds. Great time to bet them. And if you take that one step further, and I know Brian does this, if you like the team that lost, number one, you're going to bet them in game 2, but you're going to get a better series price because they're already down 1-0 in the series. So you're going to get a better series price on them. A team that was, let's say, 180 to win the series, and then they lose the first game at home, that drops down to about 120. So you're almost better to wait on betting the series price on a team. If they win game 1, you just pass on it completely because the price is through the roof. But you can get a much better price by sitting out game 1, watching for the dog. And of those 6 teams that won game 1, 6 away teams, only one went on to win the series. So there's proof in the pudding there that you get a much better price on the home team after they lose game 1. Who was that home team, Andrew? None other than Nathan McKinnon and the Colorado Avalanche. To Raven Ron's release, the Kraken.
Yes, they did. And the price adjustments between one game to the next in the NHL, it's the same thing as live betting, it seems like. There's just overreactions left and right. So if you want to make futures of a round, you can definitely wait to do that after a game or two. But we've got games to talk about before the playoffs even get here, guys. Thank you all for being here with us, though. Chat room is bumping on YouTube. We're on YouTube Shorts live right now, Instagram live, Facebook live. We are all over the map on the WagerTalk TV network. We're also live on Twitter. So, guys, let us know where you're watching PuckTime from. We appreciate all of you for being here with us. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channels. We really do appreciate it. All right, Carm, we've got the Blues and the Predators going head-to-head here. And I might add, 2 teams that get the least amount of credit, aren't talked about enough. You know, I've talked about how Nashville Bridgestone Arena is an arena I'd like to get to someday, especially for a playoff game. Seems like a great place to go for a game. But the run that Nashville was on for so long, could you only imagine if that was like the New York Rangers or the Toronto Maple Leafs? You know, I could only imagine that huge run, like the 8-0-2 or what is it, 10-1. They are a team that's underappreciated. But this St. Louis Blues team, they won't go down without a fight either. You know, they are scrappy as well. Do you have a side that sticks out to you in this game?
I'm going to go right back, Andrew. I'm going to go right back to the total in this one. And listen, totals are tough. I gave out 2 totals, or actually 3 totals. One was a team total yesterday. The team total won. The other 2 obviously didn't because the Oilers didn't show up, and the Leafs didn't show up. But you need both teams to obviously contribute theirs. But this total here is sitting at 6, under 15, and this is purely speculative from me, and I'm going to explain why. The data on this game is pretty much split both ways. There's enough data to make you want to take the over. There's just enough data to make you want to take the under. And past results don't always predict what the future outcomes are going to be. So you look at the 2 games between these 2 teams, and they were high-scoring games a little earlier in the season. That doesn't mean that just because those were high-scoring, we're going to see a high-scoring game here tonight. I think the fact that this game has importance to both teams right now, Nashville for positioning the Blues to try and get closer to Nashville, it's a true 4-point game for St. Louis, and probably one that if you look at the regulation wins for St. Louis, they need to win this game in regulation time against Nashville to get closer. Can you imagine if you have this game and St. Louis pulls their goalie in a tie game late in the game? I'm waiting to see that happen. It has yet to happen this season, but we're going to see it at some point in this last 2 weeks that teams take into consideration that they cannot give up a point to their opponent and are going to pull their goalie with a couple of minutes left in this game. I'm not going to say it's going to happen tonight, but I wouldn't be surprised in a tie game if it did. I'm leaning under here. I am going to go that this game is of importance. The Blues did a very good job of shutting down the Edmonton Oilers. the Dallas Stars did an even better job last night. They're going to have to shut down Nashville. They don't want to get into a high-scoring game because it didn't work out well for them in the first couple. Under 6 for me in this one. Brian Leonard, are you with me or are you against me?
Well, you mentioned pulling goalies. Minnesota's done it twice in overtime in the last couple of weeks and split out on those. So, yeah, that's an interesting rule that they put in there, but we'll see what happens here. These clubs have split the last 10 meetings. Blues are winning 3 of 6 in this building. Nashville currently sits at 90 points, which is good enough for the first wild card. Blues are third in that category with 84 points. Over the last 10 games, 5-on-5 play, the Blues 51.22 goal share, 49.5 expected goals, about league average or so. Nashville's played a lot better, 60.87 in the goal share, 59.49 in those categories for the expected goals. So they played a little bit better as of late, even though they have lost a few games as of late. But St. Louis has won 8 of 11 games. They're playing really well. They have 2 days rest coming into this one. Nashville's lost 3 in a row on the back of that excellent streak that you mentioned. Well, the Predators heading out on the road after this one, they'll want to secure that victory here. But I like them to do so, but I think the line's too high. St. Louis, as I mentioned, has played pretty well in this building. So I have a lean with St. Louis here, not enough to get there on either side. But this is a game that maybe live betting will give us a better line on what we're looking for. But right now, I think Nashville wins the game, but the line's too high, which means me leaning with St. Louis, but not enough to place a bet.
I know what you mean about those, Brian. Like when you're looking at the line, you're like, I kind of like this team, but don't like the number. It's been happening to me a lot lately. And I've been staying away a lot more over the past few days. I think my NHL volume's been a lot lower. Maybe some of that has to do with MLB being around. I mean, there's more to look at each day, and that way I can really just pick my spots throughout. But yeah, I mean, looking at this matchup here, when I go through some of the numbers that I had for this matchup, again, I talk about these teams being on 2 underappreciated teams, and the reason why I did that out the start. I've been betting a lot of totals, team totals and things, but take a look at Nashville here. They had a 7-4, an 8-4, 5-4, an 8-2. I mean, this is a team that was no stranger to high scoring affairs. And what's crazy to me is that they have been known for the last 5 years to, number one, it seems to always have a great goaltender. They relate, like Pekka Rinne to UC Saros. Their backups are always great. So they were always that defensive team. But as of right now, I'm seeing them as a great team that knows how to bounce back, that knows how to get it going again. So I'm comfortable here with the money line for the Nashville Predators. If people do want to jump in and get a better price, the team total for them to get to 4 does make sense. Going through their last couple of wins here, they have mostly gotten to 4 when they have been successful. But this St. Louis Blues team, to me, is still a little bit inconsistent. And I don't like that in hockey. That's what people have to know about hockey. These teams, they work in mysterious ways. And if we want to know why, I mean, you don't understand it, but look at Pittsburgh, right? I mean, you drop a game, with 4 minutes to go, you're up 3-1, you're up 4-0, they lose a game. And now all of a sudden they're winning a few games in a row. I mean, momentum is huge in the NHL, huge in the game of hockey. But I also just think that Nashville has the ability to bounce back after being blanked against the Boston Bruins. And I would also argue, guys, that, like I said earlier in the show, I mentioned Boston killed 4 penalties. They looked good on the penalty kill. Their defense was good, but Nashville still created a ton of chances in that game. So let's rock with the Nashville Predators to get the job done here, Carm.
I like that one, Andrew. I want to mention before we forget, because I'm always terrible at this. Andrew, you're so much better at this. You have a 5% play going in the NHL tonight, and I know you have a promo code for, I think it's either 3 or 7 days. So, head over to WagerTalk, pick up Andrew's 5% play for tonight. I'm always bad with this promo stuff, man, but I wish you the best of luck on this one, man. Let's see if you can build off of my Ranger win last night with one of your own tonight. Andrew, you talked about this one. I think Marco, and maybe Brian knows this. Marco was in Nashville for like a week. He caught the Vegas Golden Knights game when they were there. I'm not sure if he went to watch the Boston Bruins game as well too, but the Bruins can do that to a lot of teams. They can go in and just shut you right down. They play the same style of hockey on the road as they do at home, and they can just shut teams down. That's why they're such a dangerous team, and they're having another great year like they did not as good as last year. That was a record-breaking year, but they're having a good year. But Preds, man, I won't say I've fallen in love with this Preds team, but I did say early in the season, give the Preds some time under Brunet. They're going to learn the system. They're going to score some goals, and they're going to make the playoffs. And I'm glad I'm one up on the Prez on that one. Prez is somewhere with a box of Kleenex is looking at Yossi's girlfriend or something on the internet. So let's forget about that. He's not even watching the show. But go Preds. Sorry, I had to throw that one in.
The one thing about those is that he definitely earns some engagement. When he mentions like a player's girlfriend or wife, it gets us lots of comments on the shows. I mean, I'm sure people aren't tuning in to find out who's who. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think people are tuning in to watch the three of us talk about people's wives. And if you are, wrong show, probably the wrong show. That promo you were mentioning there, Carm, AM69, AM69. It's a week of all of my plays, all sports, not just hockey, for $69. So to me, that is a great idea. If you're interested in grabbing the 5% play, ideally, when I check my report today to see how many people grab my 5% play, I'd rather it be like not that many people, but a lot of people joining me for the week, because $35 for the 5%, $69 for all sports. You're going to get UFC. You're going to get NBA. You're going to get MLB plays. You're going to get a lot of different stuff for $69 for 1 week. And with that being said, I'll lead things off with the best bet segment in the NHL tonight. And I am going to side with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and a lot of that due to the momentum that I spoke about just a few moments ago in the NHL. You could have a team that a month ago, they're blowing leads. They can't get any depth scoring. Their goaltending is letting them down. And then when you start to see the confidence and the hope slip into a team's mind, it can do great things. And they're playing the Capitals, a rival from a long time ago that's been many years with these two teams, Ovechkin versus Crosby. The Capitals got the best of them last month. I feel like that revenge factor is there. Not rapid revenge, but it's there. And although I keep on saying on shows that I'm on that Pittsburgh is very top heavy, I would argue Washington is even more so top heavy. If they don't have a few guys doing the bulk of their scoring, I believe they don't have anybody doing their scoring. And so to me, I think it's advantage for Pittsburgh. That's my free play of the day, guys. Join me on my 5% play. 9 games today in the NHL. 1 big bet, hoping for a ton of goals, and I got an over selected for my big 5% play. Back to you guys. Brian, let's go to you for your best bet of the show. What you have going. You're crushing it with NCAA hoops. I know you're hot in multiple sports, but we'll start with that, man. Do you have any plays for Final Four?
Actually, as of right now, I've got nothing going for today. I'll probably have something up in the Final Four. So don't buy anything for me today. I've got nothing to sell, which gives you more money to buy Andrew's big 5% play today or Carmine's entire card. I'm going to go back for my best bet, and I'm going to hit on this Boston-Carolina game that we talked about earlier. These two have split the last 10 games. Neither club ever winning more than 2 straight. Very evenly matched series. 4 of the last 5 games have been 1-goal affairs. The road club has won 8 straight times before the host has captured the last 2. So your underdogs and your road teams have been very live in this series. When looking at recent 5-on-5 action in the last 10 games, Boston 51.22 goal share, 52.49 expected goals. Carolina slightly better, 59.46 goal share, 55.07 for the expected goals. During that time, the Bruins scored a 6-4-0 record. Hurricanes 8-1-1. And as Carmine mentioned way back when we started the show, that these two meet again on Tuesday. We talked about this. We all like the under, but I don't like to play under 5s and a halves. So the way I'm looking at this one is I'm going to take the Carolina team total under 3.5. It's going at about 165 right now. Carolina team total under 3.5. 7 of the last 9 games between these two, Carolina failed to reach 4 goals. So we've got some recent history, we've got the importance of the game, and we've got an underdog series that's done very well. So let me take a look at Carolina under 3.5 minus 165 as my best bet.
Carm, what are you thinking for tonight, man?
Yeah, okay.
I like that idea. I like that idea. The one time you don't jump in, man, the crickets were being heard on the show here.
The crickets were being heard. I'm going to get to my best bets in our show play in a second and answer, which will answer the Instagram question from Stock Tonk 93 about the Panthers game tonight. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention over at Sports Memo, Thursday's $2 day. Today is Jesse Schul. He has a $2 NHL play up, $2. Some great promos in it. The guy is number 1 overall the last 365 days across all sports at Sports Memo. The last 365 days in NHL, number 1, and in NBA, also number 1 the last 365 days. Guy puts in a ton of work, is doing fantastic over at Sports Memo. You can get his NHL play for tonight for only $2. So head over to Sports Memo and take advantage of that. So the Instagram question was, what do we think about the game tonight? I've talked about when a team's win streak comes to an end, and it's a longer win streak, I like to play against them in the next game or even 2. I did it with Nashville. I think it was 18 games in a row, 16-0-2. They lose to Arizona, then they lose to Colorado, and then they come home and lose in their first to the Boston Bruins. The Ottawa Senators have been playing the spoiler role. They've won 6 games in a row, 3 of them against some teams that were vying for playoff spots. But they go into Minnesota, and they looked flat in that game. It was a game that was winnable, and they didn't win it. Minnesota wins that game 3-2. Now they return home, and they're playing a Florida team that are looking to bounce back off some bad results, and especially for Bobrovsky, if he goes tonight. He's listed as the expected starter. He allowed 5 on like 17 shots in that start against the Leafs. I think there was only 16 or 17 shots on that. His save percentage was under 683, I believe. I'm going to look for them to bounce back before they play the Bruins next. I'm going to look for them to get the win tonight, minus 150. Florida Panthers as your show play. A couple plays up in the NHL. You can get them over at WagerTalk on my page. Hit the like button, guys. We appreciate all your comments. And I'm going to send it back to Andrew. Wish him best of luck with his 5% play tonight, and he'll take us home.
I appreciate it, guys. Really do. Hoping for a big night. Hoping for a big night for the 3 of us. And guys, all sports, check us out. All 3 of us, wagertalk.com. And Carm, well, my Canadians could beat the Panthers. We'll find out if the Senators can, but I'm rooting for you with the Florida Panthers in bounce back mode after the Habs played underdog. Guys, a great slate in the NHL. Thanks so much for being here with us. If you enjoyed the show, please hit the like button, show some love, subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time right here on PuckTime.